Welcome to my review for New Nightmare, the mid-90s sort of sequel to the Freddy films that had gone before. This was very much a one-off film, a what-if scenario. What if Freddy Krueger could come out of the movie world into the real world and start terrorizing the actress who played Nancy in some of those older movies? Now, I must admit that when this film first came out, it didn't sound like the greatest of ideas to me. I distinctly remember watching Barry Norman review this film on his TV show from way back when. And 25 years later, when I finally got around to watching all of the films in this series, the idea of watching this particular one still didn't appeal to me that much. It didn't really seem like the sort of idea that would have legs for an entire movie. But I tried to tell myself in the days leading up to me watching it that it is a movie with a good reputation. It's got 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street fans really do rate this one highly. A lot of people have this one at the higher end of their rankings that they do. So I tried to tell myself that, and I put the film on, and away I went. I have to say, though, after watching it, I was very disappointed with this film. You're going to hear me do a lot of moaning today, and I know I'm going to be fighting against the tide of popular opinion, but this film really wasn't for me. I was absolutely bored to tears watching this film. But first, let's start with the positives. There aren't many. So I can sum up what I liked about this film actually into just two scenes. The first of those is quite early on when Heather goes on some kind of chat show and Robert Englund comes on dressed as Freddy and starts prancing around going, "Hey, I'm back," and all that stuff. I thought that was really funny, and at that point the film could still have redeemed itself because it was still early days. But it didn't. It just went back to being boring again not long afterwards. The other scene that I like is a little bit later on when Wes Craven, I think that's him himself, is explaining the plot in his beach house. I found that quite interesting because the plot on paper sounds okay. It's just in reality, it's not that fun. But yeah, that's it. Those are the only two scenes I enjoyed in this entire movie. I even did that thing that I do sometimes where I'll check the time on the PS4 to see how much time is left because I'm not having a good time. And when I did it on this occasion, I thought, oh, there must be like 40, 45 minutes gone. I might be at the halfway point already if I'm lucky. Turns out there was only 24 minutes gone when I checked. And it was at that moment that I realised that the runtime for this film is 1 hour and 52, which is a lot longer than most horror films. I didn't know that coming into this. And I thought to myself, I did some maths in my head. And I thought to myself, there's still 1 hour, 28 minutes left. That is actually longer than the total runtime of a lot of horror films. I can't believe this. So, no, things did not get any better. I think the best place for me to start in terms of my criticism is the huge emphasis on the Dylan character. I'm not a big fan of horror films that focus on kids. There are exceptions. I like the It films. I like The Ring. All I'm saying is that if there are kids involved heavily in a horror film, it increases the chances that I won't like it. And this was one of those movies. I didn't enjoy any scene where Heather and Dylan were just sort of sat around. I didn't feel the tension that I was supposed to feel. I didn't feel any interest in their relationship. I couldn't even be bothered to go on my phone and look up whether Dylan is actually Heather's kid in real life. I just wasn't interested. There are a number of scenes involving Dylan actually which really irritated me. So the first of these is when Heather and John Saxon visit this play park, and we see Dylan climb up to the top of this bit of play equipment in a zombie-like state, and I guess we're meant to feel some tension that he might fall off this thing, and I did, but only in a very uncomfortable way. This is not the sort of horror that I really want to be watching. Seeing the possibility of a kid breaking his spine on play equipment. I don't know if it's because I'm a parent in real life to 3 kids between the ages of 5 and 10. Maybe that's something to do with it, but I really didn't like this scene. Later on, there's another bit in a hospital where Freddy finally kills somebody, albeit by ripping off one of his own kills from the original film. But Dylan is sat on a bed underneath all this, and the way that he acts in this scene, it's as if he's literally watching Freddy kill somebody for real. The acting was a little bit too on the nose with the whimpering and the crying. Awkward. I just wanted to take this kid, pull him out of the room, and then go, right, Freddy, action, carry on. It reminded me of that scene from RoboCop 2 where one of Kane's henchmen is about to completely rip open this guy with a scalpel, and one of the guys says, shouldn't the kid leave the room or something? And Kane says, no, just keep him there. And that's the moment when you knew that Kane was an evil bastard. Well, I wanted to take Dylan out of this room. I didn't really want to have him watching Freddy gut somebody. There's another scene just after this where Dylan runs across this road, again, Dylan, and Freddy picks him up and dangles him in front of this traffic, like, this is the sort of crap that I thought I would see in Freddy's Dead and didn't. You know, a cartoon Freddy just doing something really irritating that he thinks is funny and that's not funny to anybody else. I mean, Wes, this is just not good horror, I'm sorry. And then his mother is by the side of the road, losing her mind at what she's seeing. Just uncomfortable stuff to watch, it really was. Another thing I noticed, and this is definitely another criticism, is that there are so few returning actors and actresses from that original block of films. I mean, we literally get Heather Langenkamp, Robert Englund, John Saxon, and if I've left anybody else off that list, then they clearly weren't in New Nightmare anywhere near enough. But when you think of that first 6 films, I mean, they could have brought back 20, 25 fan favourites. It could have been an absolute feast for the fans. As it is, we get just the 3 from that original film. Now, I get why Johnny Depp would not have wanted to come back to the series by 95, and I could easily imagine that Patricia Arquette would have no interest either, but anybody else who was in that first 6 films, I'm sure they would have been biting Wes Craven's hand off for some work by the time the mid-90s rolled around. It's not like it would have been hard to write them into the plot. You could have had some kind of Nightmare on Elm Street convention going on in LA that Heather Langenkamp would have been obliged to attend. Lisa Wilcox could have been there. They could have had some kind of little spat about who the best final girl is. It could have been really funny. You'd have had all these people from different films coming together for the first time. It would have been really funny to see. Freddy could have descended on the whole thing and caused absolute chaos and started killing people. It could have been brilliant. As it is, though, we don't get that, and Heather Langenkamp is left carrying the can by herself for the majority of the film. Now, I wouldn't call her a weak actress, but she's definitely at her best when she's riding the wave of a good film like Nightmare 1 and Nightmare 3, and we don't have to worry too much about the way that she's delivering her lines. When she's in a bad film, which is what this is, to my mind, she's not the sort of actress who's going to drag it up from the depths and give it some respectability. And there's one scene in this which is really uncomfortable where she's supposed to have just found out that her husband's died. I don't know what she was going for when that doorbell rings, but shock and grief didn't seem to be on the agenda. It's not as if John Saxon and Robert Englund are that much better. I mean, they're good actors, usually, but they just seem a little bit afraid in this film to be themselves. John Saxon in particular is very subdued by his normal standards. Kills and gore can't rescue it. There's only 2 kills in the movie, I think. One of them is a rip-off of a kill we've already seen. The other just isn't very good anyway. The finale in the boiler room is not particularly creative. It feels like something that was written very quickly. It's very small in scale. I actually fell asleep for a good 5 or 10 minute spell just before the final showdown. The funny thing is, though, I don't remember being tired when I was watching this film. I suspect that my brain was just completely disconnected from what it was watching, and that's why I nodded off. Now, normally when this happens, I'll rewind a film after the end credits have rolled and watch what I missed. But on this occasion, I knew that there was going to be nothing in those 5 or 10 minutes which would change my opinion about this film, so I just didn't bother. I think one of the reasons why I wasn't into New Nightmare could be the fact that I've binge watched all these films over the course of just a few short months, whereas there'll be people out there who watched the original Nightmare in cinemas or watched Dream Warriors in cinemas and then had this massive gap until New Nightmare came out, and then suddenly maybe they felt all this nostalgia at seeing all these actors and actresses who played those roles that they've so cherished for so many years. That could have been a cool thing back in 94 or 95, but that's not the position that I'm in right now. Although I suspect that this isn't a massive reason why I'm on this side of the fence with this film, because there must be loads of people out there who enjoy New Nightmare who are not old enough to remember watching those 80s films at the cinema. It's probably just a taste thing on my side. If this is your first watch of one of my reviews from this series, though, don't think that I'm a massive critic of this series. I've reviewed all the 6 films before this one, and I've been mostly positive up until now. The only film that I've really knocked is The Dream Child. I even defended Freddy's Dead quite a bit. New Nightmare, though, just wasn't for me at all. It was a really boring film, and I will definitely never go back to it. Right, let's get to the bag of terror. It's going to be a very light bag of terror today, I'm afraid. Oh dear. And that is for the scene in the talk show when Freddy starts jumping around in front of the audience. That's literally it. Right. I'll be back soon with a review for Freddy vs. Jason. I've seen that film before. I'm not going to spoil what I think of it, but I will at least give away that I like it more than this film. I've seen Freddy vs. Jason several times, actually. So until then, cheerio, bye-bye.